Hello, and we are live. It's your old buddy Pizzal here, hanging out tonight with Kyle Kuchta, the director of Phantasm, the new horror convention documentary. How are you doing tonight, man?
I am doing great. It is just about 6 here on the West Coast, so thanks again for having me, man. I'm enjoying it.
Oh, oh yeah, man. It's no problem. I love horror conventions. It's kind of turned into a little bit of a love-hate relationship here lately, but I take every opportunity that I can to talk about horror conventions, and you seemed like the perfect guy to sit down and talk about horror conventions
Sure, sure.
with. But yeah, if anybody has any questions out there, leave them in the comments section of the YouTube video. I've got the Q&A app open on Google+. You can tweet them at me at Pizzowell, P-I-Z-O-W-E-L-L, and we'll get to those periodically throughout the show during our conversation. But as most people know, I, at least at one time, was a big convention goer. I think I did 3 a year for a couple years in a row. Now I usually do about one. But I always have a lot of people ask me about conventions. Who are the good celebrities? Who are the bad celebrities? Who are the good shows? The bad shows? One question I get asked so often, and there's really no good answer for it anymore, is how much does everything cost?
Yeah.
Uh, when I first started going, and this is probably the same case with you,
Mhm.
when I first started going, everything was like $20. It was $20 across the board.
Like flat. Yeah, yeah.
That got you the autograph, that got you the photo, and you were done. And today things are so out of control, beyond the usual of, well, dude, just take a lot of cash and wear comfortable shoes. I have no idea what to tell people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No,
so
it's
that's kind of my convention background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and why you wanted to make the film Phantasm?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been a horror fan since I was a little kid. In a way that I think a lot of little kids were. It was very taboo. It was like you were watching horror movies through your fingers there, as tight as you could lace them, but it's showing enough light to still see something on the screen. Um, that was me. But my grandparents always kind of showed me the Universal horror monsters and all that stuff, and I don't know. And then your adolescence happens, and you become a preteen and a teenager, and all of a sudden I'm this teenager, this angsty teenager, and I'm I want to be part of something different. I want to enjoy something different. And I've always sort of liked horror movies, and they've kind of weaved in and out of my life. And then they were there to stay as I became a teenager. And then, so I didn't realize what a convention was until about, I would say, 2 years into that, like rediscovering of horror. I found out what a convention was. Or I should say maybe like within a year, because I used to read Fangoria. Fangoria was putting on conventions
Oh
at
yeah.
the time. This was 2005, 2006. They were doing Weekend of Horrors, mostly California, sometimes New York, but mostly out here in California. And then I found out about one called Rock and Shock in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm a Connecticut boy by heart, and so Worcester, Massachusetts wasn't too far away. I convinced my mom to take me, and that's how it all started. Like it was, as you say, when I started, and when at least mid 2000s, the conventions were more low key, and kind of like there wasn't any. They were all kind of the same. Like they all had their own similar flavor, but they were all kind of found upon the same thing, where like you're gonna get an autograph and a picture. There's gonna be vendors. There's gonna be panels. There's gonna be all this, and that's what started it, and that's what interested me. Like I didn't realize that there were so many people who were liking the same thing. Um, so every year after that, I convinced my mom, and one year I convinced my dad to take me. When we went every year, it was a yearly thing. We started gathering more and more family members to come up with us. It was a blast, and then I went to college and couldn't go anymore. Like there was nothing. I went to I went to Syracuse, New York. I went to upstate New York, and there was nothing. There was nothing at the time, and to be honest, like my interest in horror like started to dwindle because there was no place for me to like get a serious fix. You know, there wasn't any sort of like plenty of my friends liked horror, like that was fine, but nobody liked horror. Like nobody was like let's go to a convention. That didn't exist.
Right.
People were like, oh, you know, you can go and you can tell us how it is, and we'll be hanging out back here. So that's where Phantasm came from. Was out of this because when people think about horror fans, they're usually stereotyped into a certain faction of negativity. Like there's not a lot of there's not a huge positive stereotype for horror fans, and I felt that I knew there was many exceptions to the rule. Like I being a horror fan myself, I knew like if somebody just went to a convention, they would understand. But I was like, okay, I can be the person that bridges that gap. I can tell people like, hey, this is what it's all about. I can be that person. And that's where Phantasm came from. I was just like, I just want people to know that like this is really, really awesome. And like even if you don't like horror, like I know they would have a blast. Like it was almost a film to convince people to just go have a good time with me. like hey, let's go here for the weekend. It was my recruitment for friends is what it was, really.
Right. Well, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying there because like I've kind of turned my girlfriend on to going to conventions now, and we usually at this point we do one a year. We do one of the bigger ones.
Sure.
She could care less about the celebrities. Care less about her. The common thing that I hear from her whenever she sees a celebrity is, they've gotten really old, or they look so much, or they look so much older in person. That's it. She could care less about the celebrities. She goes for the kind of freak show atmosphere. The fact that people are just there, they're letting their freak flag fly, they're in crazy costumes and outfits, and there's a kind of freedom and acceptance at a horror convention. And actually in your documentary, which I did, for everybody out there, I reviewed Phantasm. The review went up earlier today. There's a link to it in the description below. Go check it out. There's also a link to where you can go and pre-order the DVD, which it comes out tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Pre-order ends tomorrow. So anybody who pre-orders, it'll be shipped on Wednesday. I thought it was going to be shipped tomorrow, but I just realized it's Veterans Day, so it won't be shipped tomorrow. It'll be shipped Wednesday. The pre-order price is like a discounted price, and there's also an option for a signed DVD. So like, it's just like fun stuff to get people excited about it, and then it like really officially comes out on tomorrow. Yeah, the 11th.
Okay. Yeah, cool. But yeah, I checked out the documentary. I've got my review to it. I highly recommend it. Really cool. Go check out my review. Go to the link and pre-order your copy of Phantasm. But actually, Joe Lynch, he said it best. He said that there are no comedy movie conventions. There are no action movie conventions. Horror and sci-fi, they're like the only genres that have their own conventions, and that's because it's kind of horror is kind of a fringe genre. And people who love horror are they're either on the fringe by their own choice because they realize that that's sort of who they are, or the public puts them on the fringe because you tell people I'm a horror fan. I'm very proud that I'm a horror fan. I don't look like a traditional horror fan. I've not got, I think most people, they think of a horror fan, they think of, long black hair, tattoos on the face, an upside down cross on their forehead, 666 on the back of their neck, something to that effect. But people are very accepting of me and my love of horror, but they don't get it. They kind of don't get it. But Joe Lynch really sort of nailed it for me in saying that, and in saying that at a horror convention, there's just acceptance. You're all there for the same reason because you love horror. He's like, and this is something else I found totally true. Whether I've been to a huge show or a tiny show, I've never seen an altercation, a physical altercation. I've never seen a fight. I've never seen two people arguing. I've seen people pissed off at the organizers and at the event, but I've never seen people like fighting each other.
Yeah. No, I mean that's all. He does have a good point, and it's I don't know. It's one of those things where, yeah, horror and sci-fi are this fringe, but it's out of the reason that it's a fringe is like it's based out of a common element that all humans feel, and that's fear as far as horror goes. And in science fiction, it's just like a fantasy land. It's like yeah, like we all experience comedy and we all laugh, but like say you watch The Hangover, it's hard to connect with that in a way
Right.
because like it's based in reality, but like it's so crazy. But like you could all watch Nightmare on Elm Street and feel a certain sense of fear, or at least understand the similar fear that everybody will feel about what's going on. There's an atmosphere and there's a connection that you feel to that emotion. And the thing about a horror convention or a sci-fi convention is that like everybody who is there enjoys feeling that emotion in a way, and they can share that connection with other people. It's weird that it can be fringe, but it's only fringe because everybody feels the same thing. It's almost like a weird ass backwards way of connecting with something. It's like you can be a part of a convention because you enjoy it, or you will stay away from it because it is too much. Like it's very he's right, and it's just so the psychology of all of it is bizarre, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I just like going to conventions because they're a blast. But like there is a serious psychology to it, and it's a lot, and it's really exciting that people enjoy it the same way.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely, and we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show about how uh, when we first started, or when I first started, which was 2009, was my first convention. I had no idea what I was walking into. I had no idea what I was going to experience. I had the time of my life. I loved it. It was it was one of the bigger shows, but it wasn't a huge show. It was a big show, but it's hard to describe. It was one of those shows that was just really well organized, and everybody was super cool. And I mean, it's one of those kind of shows you can get in and out of and meet everybody that you wanted to meet in like 3 hours and be on your way. And everything was $20. Everything was
Mm.
$20. And today, one thing, we talked about the prices. Prices are crazy across the board, and just the number of conventions these days. It seems like for every horror hound, for every Texas Frightmare weekend, there's 10 smaller shows that are just popping up
Mhm.
every weekend. It's like literally every weekend there's a horror convention going on somewhere. But uh, describe your first horror convention. What was the experience like for you?
Um, my mother, bless her, she had no idea what she was getting into. Neither of us did. Um, Neither of us really did, but my mother primarily didn't know what she was getting into, and she she like got into it. She got really excited about it, and we both spoiled ourselves that weekend because we were both really excited. I don't think we realized what we were like. I don't know. We went up and we talked to everybody, whether or not we got an autograph or a picture from everybody, whatever. Like we went up and talked to everybody. That particular convention, it was 2006. It was Rock and Shock from Worcester, Massachusetts. That particular convention had a Devil's Rejects reunion, for lack of a better term. They had a lot of the cast from the Devil's Rejects there. And that was like one of the movies that like got me really excited for horror again. It was The Devil's Rejects. It was like that was one of my favorite movies for a while, and I haven't revisited it in a while, so I should actually check it out again. But I just remember that was the one. Like The Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses, Dawn of the Dead remake. Like these things like got me excited for horror, and then like brought me down paths to see what some of the older movies were about and all that stuff. But anyway, that got me excited because I was going to meet Sid Haig, I was going to meet Bill Moseley, I was going to meet Lou Temple, I was going to meet all these who now still does conventions, but he does conventions for The Walking Dead. It's just like a weird transition for people like that. But anyway, he was the convention. It was, yeah. I mean, everybody was about $20. You could get your picture, and back in my day, everybody was happy. But uh, it was, but the thing was, it was all, and not to say it was plain Jane, like, but I think that horror was just on the up and up again. There's an interesting thing about the horror genre is that it does weave in and out of the mainstream. It always has. You consider the '80s slashers mainstream, and then you consider like the early to mid '90s, and you're like, where was horror then? Then you
Right.
come in with your screams and your teen slashers in the late '90s, early 2000s. Started to kind of dwindle again. Torture porn, like it's all this snake, man. It's just this crazy
Right.
weed that has no rhyme or reason to it, but it does. And the thing about 2006, 2007, it was like just out of the mainstream, just barely. Like they were like the Saw franchises were kind of like spiraling downward. They were, they were whatever. So the people that were there were not necessarily mainstream horror fans. They were kind of like these people. It was only the year of the convention, the third or fourth year of the convention, so it was still really young. It was people like really in that community, really digging to try to find something to connect to.
Right.
So my experience, I was 15, and it was just eye opening, man. I didn't realize that people gave a shit like I gave a shit, if not more. I was still super young. Like these
Right.
people loved horror, and just like I didn't know existed. I did not know that you could like it that much, and I was so excited because I was like, that means it's okay for me to like it as much as I do, and to still continue that interest and to continue that obsession. Like it gave me a safe space to be like, hell yes, this is what I love,
Hmm.
and it still does that for me. Even more so now because I can go there now as as a 23-year-old dude and connect with people my age or even younger or older, but still have that social connection with people. Because like I was looking at these conventions on MySpace and stuff, like there was the social media in a way was still a little primitive in that way. There was not a lot of there was a profile, but there wasn't any sort of like real connection.
Right.
With Twitter and Facebook now, like you can connect with the conventions, with the celebrities, with people, with your friends that you've met there. Like you can connect with all those people now, and being able to kind of grow with that as a teenager into an adult, as the conventions, like I said, that one was kind of plain Jane, but now these conventions are utilizing these tools to really reach out to communities, whether it's the immediate local community or the horror community at large. They're really finding ways to, and it is making these smaller shows pop up because people know that they can do this homegrown sort of thing. There's interest from people, there's interest from the celebrities and the guests, there's plenty of vendors, like this all exists. So, and that's due to horror being in the mainstream right now. Who knows if in 3 or 4 years it's still going to have that kind of, what happens when The Walking Dead ends? Is it going to kind of, fall back by the wayside, or and there's no way of knowing. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason. So
Well, that's an excellent question, and you made a great point. Horror is mainstream now because of The Walking Dead.
yeah,
So you're seeing all these smaller shows popping up because the bigger shows that are bringing in Walking Dead people are making money hand over fist, so they want to get a piece of that.
yeah,
That's an excellent point, and we actually. For people who are watching this, they're aware of the Sausage Factory, which is a live show like this that I moderate with some other YouTubers. And we actually had a show last season where we talked to Jeff Waldrich, who was the former promoter and organizer of the Scarefest Horror Convention here in Kentucky.
yeah.
And we asked him, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to horror conventions? Without missing a beat, he goes, The Walking Dead. He says The Walking Dead is the cancer of the horror convention, and I can totally understand why. Because here's my analogy. There's an entire family of people that I know.
Mhm.
They're not horror fans, but they're Walking Dead fans. They've never been to a horror convention before, but they're going to horror conventions now because Walking Dead people are there. They went to Fright Night Film Fest like 2 years ago here in Kentucky.
Yep.
They bought VIP passes. They bought hotel rooms. They bought photo op tickets, autograph tickets, all to meet, really just to meet Norman Reedus, but to meet all the other Walking Dead people too. They had spent literally probably $1,000 before they'd even walked through the door. And that's because of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
The crowds have, from 2009 to today, even that small show that I was talking about, that very first one that I went to, today the crowd's 3-4 times what it was because you have a Walking Dead person there. Mm-hmm. You know, Walking Dead's crossed over into the mainstream, and everybody who loves The Walking Dead, to be able to meet those people, will go to the shows and pay pretty much whatever the price to meet them.
Yeah.
Do you think The Walking Dead's a good thing or a bad thing for conventions?
It's really it's a double-edged sword. You know, well, you've seen the documentary, and those. I hope some other people will, after this, might want to go check it out. It is a love letter to conventions, and I was filming when I started filming in 2012, and Walking Dead actors were just starting to utilize conventions, and that Horror Hound, that last Horror Hound that I filmed at, they sold out Saturday and Sunday. That's never happened. Absolutely, 100% never happened. General admission sold out. It was craziness. That being said, I think that Walking Dead fans, and I don't know, I think that conventions should host Walking Dead guests. I think that there are reasons why they're there. You know, I mean, Norman Reedus, Scott Wilson, Lou Temple, all these people were doing conventions before they were on The Walking Dead, and now they're just utilizing their newfound position in the horror or just television and like film community for their own benefit, and they're allowed to do that. I think it's really at the discretion of the convention coordinator. The convention coordinators, if they're like the board, whatever, however many people are setting up the convention, is really at their discretion. There are, as you said, there are a lot of pop-up conventions, and you can tell why these conventions pop up, whether it is because there's money to be had, or whether or not they really feel that there needs to be a community gathering for like-minded fans and horror fans and stuff like that. And I think Walking Dead guests and the Walking Dead show and Walking Dead fans are all pawns in this game. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that that sort of naivete and greed can exist in the world. And it sucks because I don't want to admit that it exists. I don't. I wish that I did not have to say those words and did not have to even think that The Walking Dead might be an issue. But it's how the world works sometimes, and I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think it's a tool. I think it's to be used wisely, and if in the right hands, I think it can be like well done. I think Horror Hound didn't realize what would happen, and I think they worked to fix their issues with. I mean, that show really did blow up. Like, I think that what people realize, if you can sell out 2 days because of Walking Dead fans, you can do that wherever. And I think Horror Hound really was, or Monster Mania the 2 weeks before that, and Horror Hound both were the telltale signs that this is here to stay for a little while in the convention circuit. And both of those shows benefited from that as a learning experience and as gaining more fans. Like, I think The Walking Dead is a good way to gain more people to come to your show because they're going to discover other things besides The Walking Dead. They're going to discover a lot of things. They're going to realize that they can be involved in this community. They don't need to just like this one television show. I don't know, man. You can go back and forth forever I already sense myself going back and forth forever, talking like in my like as I talk.
Right.
Um, it really, I mean, I think it is a tool to be used, and it's a powerful one, and I think it needs
Right.
to be used correctly.
It's a
So,
powerful weapon. You must wield it with responsibility.
absolutely,
Let me,
and it is difficult when the weapon is manufactured by people who will not manufacture it properly, but that's something else entirely.
right. Let me just reiterate to everybody who's watching that if you have any questions for myself or Kyle, you can leave them in the comment section below on the video. The Q&A app is open on Google+, or you can tweet them to me at Pizzal. Let's talk about, were there any celebrities that you have met that you were just starstruck by?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, to be honest, it's funny because I mean, I ended up interviewing Joe Lynch, and they were doing the Holliston thing at the time. I actually was a little starstruck by Adam Green. He is he's a person that is getting his stuff made. Like his stuff alone, he is getting his like art and his work made, and it was just really it's it's a body of work and a process that I admire, and it was really really neat to finally to meet him, and I was starstruck. I was like, dude, you're doing what me and so many filmmakers and horror fans and all these things, you are doing what we want to be doing. You are he is a face and a name to go along with what horror fans want to do, which is so cool. And I was like, oh, this will be fine. Like I had previously talked to Joe before, so I was like, okay, cool. Like there's not a mutual connection, but it's just like I don't know. Even it felt like it was going to even the playing field in a way, for lack of a better term. I was like, okay, I won't be like crazy stars. Like, and I was just like, I don't remember what I said. I met him like since then a few times, and like I got that initial like awkwardness out of the way, which is nice.
Uh,
There was Adam Green was one. Um, Kane Hodder was one as well, and it's interesting because like I wasn't necessarily the biggest Friday. I am not necessarily the biggest Friday the 13th fan. But the thing about Kane is he is so personable and he is so
right.
great to all his fans that like I went up there and I was like, oh wow, you're great. Like you are a great person just in general. And like he did his whole thing where if you've ever met Kane Hodder at a convention, he'll always like if you want to be choked, even if you don't want to be choked, he'll choke you for a photo op.
Yeah.
And it's I mean
Yeah.
it's like the most loving, hurtful choke of all time. Like there's so much emotion in your neck at that point. Um,
You've normally got to pay for that kind of stuff. Well, actually, you're paying for it here with him too. So
yeah, true, but it's there's a lot of love that goes into his show, and there's a lot of love that he has for his fans and where
yeah,
he is now. Um, and I was just kind of overwhelmed by that. Not necessarily starstruck per se, but just overwhelmed with his politeness and his excitement, and all that. It's actually kind of the same with Derek Mears, another Jason. He is so happy to be at a show. And not to say that like that some guests aren't, but some guests might not be. And there's just like you can sense that like when you are all hopped up on your excitement, you can tell when somebody else is not having any of it. And
right, right.
the thing about Derek and Kane and Adam and most of the guests that I've ever met have all had that sense of excitement. But it's just particularly Derek Mears, who was he was only at that point only Jason in the remake of Friday the 13th. Like that was all he was. He was so happy to be meeting people and there and taking pictures. Like he would always take time to talk. Last one was Doug Bradley was another one. Just
Oh
so
yeah.
iconic. Just so iconic. So well spoken. Just like just a awesome dude. Just an awesome dude. So those guys like I mean, and Doug Bradley I met my first year, and he was the first guest of the first year of the first convention I ever gone to. So like that was just almost inherently like who I could have talked to like a convention volunteer. I would have been like, what? It would have been like that. But yeah, and then yeah, so Doug Bradley, Derek Mears, Kane Hodder, Adam Green, like those guys. And like since then I've met them and talked to them again, and they bring this energy and this excitement to a show that's just it's like it's unmatched for me, man. Like those guys are great.
I want to. The very first convention I went to, I met both Kane Hodder and Doug Bradley, and I think they were. I think Doug Bradley was the third person I met, and I want to say Kane was like the fourth or fifth person I met.
Gotcha.
And this was before Kane. Now Kane actually choked one person unconscious, so he's kind of had to ease back from the actual real choking because he actually choked somebody unconscious. But now the first time I met him, you know, I mean, he did that where he was like, hey, have I met you before? And I was like, no, man. So right before the picture's taken, he just locks onto your throat, and it's like, so I had that experience. And then a couple of years later, I heard, well, you know, he's not doing that anymore so much because he choked some kid out. So he's got to ease back off of that. But every convention that I've seen Kane Hodder at, there's always people at his table. He's always surrounded by people. He's always taking pictures. He's always talking to people. And I even told him one time, I was like, dude, when you hang up the machete, you should move to Kentucky. They'll make you like mayor of some town here in Kentucky. Kentucky loves Kane Hodder. Move to Kentucky. And like you said, really personable. I was standing at his table one time, and there was a guy there talking to him. Totally starstruck, just yammering on, making no sense at all, and Kane was just going, yeah, and just let him ramble for like 10 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Most people after 3 minutes would have been like, get the hell out of here. You're holding up my line. You're crazy. Get the hell out of here. He just sat there and let him yammer on. It was almost endearing, you know, because he was that nice to this fan.
Yeah.
So nothing but respect for Kane Hodder for me. I think I've still got his handprints around my throat somewhere. They're still brewed.
Tattoo now, dude.
Yeah. And I met Doug Bradley, and definitely a high point. Very nice guy. Of course, well spoken. I mean, you just hear Pinhead in there, you know. But yeah, another really nice guy. I really enjoyed meeting him. That first horror convention was like Doug Bradley, Kane Hodder, Ken Foray was there, Gunnar Hansen was there, Daniel Harris was there. I mean, it was a really cool lineup, and I got to meet pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
The only person I was really starstruck by was Gunnar Hansen. Gunnar Hansen had me a little starstruck. I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. His was by far the longest line. People were there to like see Gunnar Hansen.
Wow, yeah.
And I was, and like there was a guy behind me who was even more super fan of Gunnar Hansen than I was. Like he brought in a for real chainsaw. I don't know how he got a chainsaw past security, but he had like a for real chainsaw. But he was going to let it. Maybe the blade was off of it or something, or the chain was off of it or something. But I was just sitting there thinking, like, how'd this guy get this chainsaw in here? And he was just going on about Gunnar Hansen and chainsaw and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, I thought I was a super fan. This guy's like. Super fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to just kind of, you know, have a few minutes of their time and just kind of chew their ear. And some of them are far more open to that experience of kind of shooting the bull with you than others. And you really got to commend the ones that are. You know, that are like that. That'll give you more than just the 20 seconds to sign something and take a picture. So, and without if you want to name names, feel free name names. But have you had any overly negative experiences with guests at conventions?
I have. I won't name names. But I have, and it is hard. It's hard to take that, especially when I had my first really negative experience. I was a senior in high school. I had decided that horror was going to be my thing. Like I was going to. I ended up going. Like I went to film school. Like horror was what got me into filmmaking. What got me excited about art. It's everything. Like it was. By that point, I had really solidified in me that this was going to be something. And I had met a legend. I was going to meet a legend in horror, and it just didn't go well, man. And people say not to meet your heroes. Conventions really put your heroes on a pedestal. And that's just the nature of the beast, you know. So you can't expect everybody to be a Doug Bradley. You can't expect everybody to be a Kane Hodder. Like people are people. People are all different, and people are all there for different reasons. You have to be there for different reasons, you know. Like that's all stuff I didn't understand because I was really blessed and I had 2-3 really great years before this happened. We had a good run.
Right.
Right. And part of that was me just being a little naive about it, maybe. You know, maybe
right.
I just, my expectations by that point were all the same. Since then, I met the same person, and my experience that second time was much better. So you have to realize that these people are human. They're stuck in a convention center for 8 hours. Who knows when they eat? I think I've seen anybody eat ever. And like I said, when you're a master of something, when you have been doing this for a really long time, like maybe, I don't know, maybe just like you're allowed to have an off day, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe me catching them on the off day was not the best time for me, but that's neither here nor there. You just have to just have to realize it does suck because like I don't know, you horror fans all hold this very close to them with good reason, and sometimes like you play with fire, like you without knowing you're playing with fire, you end up playing with fire.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way, but it's just it is like you're excited, you're in this place that's like almost like it feels like it's made for you. It feels like it's tailor-made for you and you alone to be in this place. So, like when something doesn't go your way, like that hurts. It hurts, but you know you do have to. I don't know. I have learned to get over it. I gave that person another chance, and they were much better. So like it's just you know like I said, it's people are people, and this environment does put them on a pedestal. But like you and your mind have to be like okay, like. They have their own shit going on too. You know, I don't know. So you know, I've had a negative experience, and it was a bummer.
I've been lucky in that I've never had an overly negative experience where like I've walked away from a celebrity saying, "God, what an asshole," or just you know being like, "Look, I want my money back." I do have a funny Tom Savini story.
Sure.
Have you ever met Tom Savini?
Yeah.
Tom Savini is very dry with the fans.
Yeah.
So I'm at Tom Savini's table. I get my item signed, and I'm talking to his assistant who's there, and we're having a conversation.
Sure.
And Savini's looking at me like, "Just go, just leave." So I hand him $100 bill for this autograph.
Yeah.
He takes the $100 bill, throws it under the table, and stares at me.
Oh,
so I stare at him. So I stare at him.
Yeah.
And I go, can I get my change? And he goes, what? I said, I gave you 100. Oh. So he reaches under the table, pulls out the 100 and goes, I just take cash and throw it. I don't know what I'm even taking. Here's your change. But I'm thinking, dude, you tried to dupe me at $80. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I guess he thought, you know, this guy's taken up so much of my time, he owes me the extra $80. But I was just like, dude, where's my change?
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. But
That's
I,
funny.
I've heard a lot of people have negative experiences with him, but very dry,
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very not personable, not personable.
Sure, sure.
But aside from that, I mean, I've met celebrities who they definitely think they are much bigger celebrities than they are, or they seem very, very disinterested, or they like will shake your hand and not even look at you, or they'll shake your hand with a glove on and not look at you.
Like somehow
So
your eyes have germs too.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
admit germs.
um, exactly. So yeah, I've met those. I've
Yeah.
met those people. Were there anybody were there any celebrities for the documentary that you wanted to interview who just sort of gave you the cold shoulder, or just said, "Nah, I don't have time"?
Oh, certainly not the cold shoulder in any sort of negative way. I wanted to. The idea was I wanted to be able to interview more people, without a doubt. But those weekends, especially the weekends that I decided to go, like they just grew to astronomical proportions, man. Like where they were just crazy busy. Um, I wanted to interview Bill Moseley, and he always, always, always has a line. Like he's just one of those people who will always have a line at a convention, no matter what. He's a great dude. Um, and it just ended up not working out. Or like that was down when I was in Orlando. I was very out of my element. That show was one I had never gone to before. I was down in the South. Like I was doing all like northeastern conventions, and this was one that
Right.
was like way out of my element. It's very much a party show too, so and it was on Halloween weekend. It's a very very different environment than what I had been previously filming. So like my interviews down there and my footage from down there is very different, which is cool. It was just like one of those things where like I didn't get a chance to talk to some people just because like it's a crazy show.
Right.
And yeah, nobody who was just like no, never, or like nothing negative. Like I'd only asked a couple people who were like, nah, sorry, and it wasn't like, and it was just it's just business. Everybody's there for a different reason. Some people are cool to just talk. Some people are like I can't, and that's cool. Like nothing I took to heart. But like Bill was like one of the big ones, and it was one of those just missed opportunities. But that stuff happens, and I'm so happy with the people that I did talk to, just because like I talked to a lot of people who were new to the scene, a lot of people who had been at the scene for a while, celebrities, vendors. Like it was just all a really great group of people that I got to talk to. And of course, I always wish to mix it up and have some more, but like it was just one of those things where it just didn't work out. So
Right. But I mean, you got a very nice interview with Heather Langenkamp, who I met actually last year, or no, this year, earlier this year, and she's very, very sweet, very, very personable, a very nice, just a very nice person. And
yeah,
she gets it. She gets the communal, um, the communal aspect of the horror convention, and the fact that people are there to see her. It doesn't matter if you're known for one thing that you did
hmm
30 years ago.
yeah,
The horror fans have incredibly long memories.
yeah,
We're incredibly dedicated people. Doesn't matter how long ago you did something, or if it's just one thing that you're known for.
yeah,
We will love you forever, regardless.
yeah.
And she got that. She got that. She understands that.
She does. She was one of the first interviews I had. Actually, she was one of the first people I interviewed. Um, and this was at a time where the film was going to be a short student film for me to get my degree. It wasn't going to be any more than that. It was going to
Uh,
be less than 20 minutes. It was going to be like a very brief overview of like this is what a convention looks like, and it was very very plain. Heather had so many things to say. She had so many great things to say. I only got to include some of it in the documentary. Some of it's in like extended, but like some of it's in extended interviews and stuff like that on the DVD. But as far as like what's in the final film, what she says is very wise, very she is like a mother to horror fans and to horror conventions, and it's very um, very unique position that she is in, and that she has put herself in a way. This is a legacy for her. This is part of what she does, and she is part of a documentary called I Am Nancy. So if anybody can check that out, like definitely check it out. It's a great doc about her legacy, as her character in Nightmare. Like it's really really interesting. So she's great. She is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
I'll love her forever. I have a younger brother who has autism, and he loves Nightmare on Elm Street, and he loves Nancy. So I had my video camera, and I was like, "Look, is it okay if I just shoot you saying hi to him?" And he would really love that. She was like, "Absolutely." And she shot it was this really nice, like, "Hi, how are you? You've got a great brother, and hopefully I can meet you someday." And blah blah blah. And she just it turned into a minute-long video, and I'm like, I'm in love with you now.
Yeah.
Marry me. You know what I mean? So yeah, she won my heart that day. So
that's incredible. Like I love hearing stories like that, man, because that shit's what this is all about. Like this is what this was all about to me. This is what Phantasm was all about to me, is people having experiences like that. And that's more often than not, that's what the experience that people have. Like not specifically like so much like that, but you will hear a story of somebody meeting a celebrity and like just having a great minute-long conversation, and that sticks with them. Those experiences really, really stick with them. And your story right there is just like that's what this is all about for me, and that's what I want people to realize, that what these conventions mean to people. Like I know you will remember that forever. Like that's and people have stories like that. I heard stories from people who went to Weekend of Horrors back in like the 80s and the late 90s, and people hold on to that, man. Like this is what we love, and when it's done right, it means the world to us. When it's done wrong, it still means something to us, but when it's done right, it like is just above and beyond, man. So that's an awesome story. She is great.
Yeah, and it's those experiences too that kind of make it when you have that bad experience, or even like that guest could have been a lot nicer. Those great experiences make the lesser great experiences more tolerable.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You can only have those kind of experiences, at a convention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
no, without a doubt.
Yeah, and actually, my goodness, Saska Chuwan Steam Shovel just commented that he just ordered a copy of Phantasm. So thank you, buddy.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Steam Shovel. That's incredible. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And I'll look for your actual name and not call you Mr. Steam Shovel. But that's very cool. Thank you. It means a lot.
My buddy Jay the Stingray says he also had a very positive experience with Heather Langenkamp. Said that she was super nice when he met her earlier this year also. So
awesome, Jay.
Heather Langenkamp.
I'm telling you, man, she's the best.
She's just getting brownie points everywhere.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. You also talked to Amanda Weiss in the documentary, and I have yet to meet her. How was she?
That was only her third or fourth convention, I believe. She had just gotten into the convention scene, and she was nervous. She was she was still kind of feeling it out, but she was teaming up with Heather Langenkamp and Lisa Wilcox and people who had been doing conventions for a while, and she has a good group. I think again, she might have been one of those people, and not to speak for her because she didn't say this, but I had an inkling that she might have been one of those people who was just like, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. Like, yeah,
Right.
I had a role as Tina, and that is important to people, and that's meaningful in cinema and horror and all that. But like, there have been horror stories of conventions, and unfortunately, there's only a handful. I could probably count them on one hand, but those get more press than anything ever. You know what I mean? So like, I think it might have scared her for a little bit, but I think she was looking to embrace this role that she had 30 years ago now, and she was having a blast. She was having such a good time meeting all these fans. She's Freddy's first kill. Like, that's huge.
Right.
That is huge, and I think for her, like, that didn't resonate until she was doing conventions and she was meeting all these people, and she was meeting people that she would see at conventions like the next month, the next year. Like, she was meeting regulars, and she was learning from them, like, just as much as they were learning about her. She was learning like about them and from conventions and all this. So she was a sweetheart. She is super bubbly and very. I don't know. She definitely. I saw her. She having open arms coming into the convention scene, and it was very cool.
But and you made a good point, and I've heard this said before about convention guests, or even are you familiar with Peter Bracke, who wrote the novel, who wrote the Crystal Lake Memories book?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't met.
I've heard of. Oh, great guy. But I've heard it said from him about people that he interviewed for the book, the same as like when like convention organizers reach out to these people, they go, well, why do people want to meet me or talk to me about a movie that I was in 30 years ago? That I was, that's the only movie that I ever did. They really don't quite understand the impact of the genre or the dedication and the loyalty of the fans, and then they go to these conventions and they're like, oh wow, it's a whole other world. Yeah,
it really is. I mean, and it's great that so many people are coming out of the woodwork in a way. When I interviewed Tuesday Night, I was only her like third convention too,
right.
And like these figures are huge, and it's great when there's a positive give and take. Like, you could tell that both Tuesday and Amanda were both getting so much out of meeting fans, and the fans were getting so much out of meeting them. It's just it's really, really awesome. And if somebody were to ask me, why would anybody want to meet me after 20, 30 years? Like, I don't think I could give them an answer. I could just only urge them to try it. Like, I don't think I could articulate into words what it means. It's just one of those things where, like, they really do have to go. Like, they have to give it a shot. Like, you have to try this in order to understand what this means to these fans. Like, it's very hard to articulate. And, Phantasm gets close, I think, but it's one of those things that you have to be in that experience to really, really get it. I mean, I tried to make Phantasm so it would emulate that the best that it could. But, I mean, my advice is just to go to one. Like, you just got to go to one.
Yeah. Well, when did you decide to take it from a student film to, a standalone documentary? And how did that come about where, you're at this point now and you're about to release the documentary upon the world?
It's crazy to even think that it's become like this, man. So I was going into my senior year at Syracuse University. I was really, really scared because everybody has to have a senior thesis. Like, everybody has to have a thesis in order to graduate. I was struggling throughout college with my love for horror because I was worried that it wasn't meaningful. I was worried that it wasn't my path. I was worried that it was amateur or immature or a lot of negative things. I was worried that it wasn't right, and that was partially it was taught to me, partially it was my insecurities, but it was all there. So I was struggling. I went to, but Syracuse ended up having hosting their first convention, horror convention, right in the city of Syracuse, and I
Oh,
went,
cool.
and now I know that they've kind of gotten their shit together, for lack of a better term. But their first year was not good, and it really affected me. Like like more than I imagined, it really affected me. The fact that the convention was not good, like it hurt. Like it felt like a personal attack on me. I can't. I don't know. I don't know why, but it did, and I was kind of reeling from it, man. I was like, I don't know what just happened, but that really sucked. So that was like almost like a strange rock bottom of sorts for my relationship with horror. And I was like, I need to find out why this affected me so negatively, and why I've sort of lost touch with what I loved so much for so much of my life. So it started out, it was like, and I finally was like, oh my god, I'll try to use my senior thesis to explain to people what a horror convention is, and see if maybe they get it. Maybe something will click. So I did a Kickstarter. I raised some money for 4 conventions. I filmed at all the 4 conventions. I talked to people, and as I started going to conventions by myself and interviewing people, I started gaining these friends and making these relationships and these friendships that I didn't know would exist. So by the time I finished filming these 4 conventions, I didn't want the film to be just an overview of what a convention was anymore. I wanted people to understand there's a community, there's a sense of love and compassion and community here that I didn't even realize I was a part of until I was knee deep in it, you know? I didn't realize
Right.
what it was until I was already engulfed, and I was like wondering if these people were going to be at the next show, and like I like it all just kind of happened to me. And then I started realizing how excited I was about that, and how happy I was about that, and how much I wanted to share that with people. So it ended up being, I tried to convince my professor to allow me to do at least an hour-long documentary, and they said no. They said no. So on the DVD is the original short film that started this, and then the summer after I graduated, I made it into 55 minutes. I made it into an hour documentary, because there was so much more that I wanted to tell. Like the short film gets the gist across, but there's so much more that I wanted to tell in the feature length that is there now, and that I'm really, really happy with. It is a short feature, but like it gets exactly what I want to get across, and I'm really, really happy with that. So, and then it was one of those things where like I was feeling that, and then as people found out that I was doing a documentary about it, people wanted to see it. Like people were like, "Oh my God, nobody's done a documentary about the fans, really, about horror conventions, about the fans. Like nobody's, I don't know, there was nothing really there." There was and I show this in the documentary too. There was this documentary, not really even a documentary. It's more of just like a showcase video of 1986's Fangoria's Weekend of Horrors. Like it was it wasn't so much a documentary as it was like it was almost if you ordered Fangoria in the mail and they sent you that tape almost as a brochure to come visit our convention. That's what it felt like. So I wanted Phantasm to be a love letter. I wanted it to show what the conventions mean to people and what it meant to me, as I discovered it, as I started to realize what it meant to me. It was really kind of a crazy instance that it all happened. So now, there was a demand to see it, which I didn't expect at all. It took me a little while to get the DVD out. It's self-distributed, so like I did it all myself with the help of a couple people who know a little bit more technically than I do. Thank God, because I don't know what would happen, man. But it's finally coming out, and I couldn't be more excited that people want to see it, that it's something tangible now, that people can connect with it. Like I'm just happy that it exists in the world now. And I'm very lucky that it fell into my hands to be able to do that. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said in the beginning, it really is a love letter to horror conventions. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen my review, go check it out. Also, follow the link in the video to pre-order the documentary. So if you guys have any other questions or comments that you want to ask us, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap it up. Let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
What is your or who is your dream guest? Your convention dream guest? If you had just one.
Well, boy. I would love to meet Jessica Harper. Phantom of the Paradise, Suspiria. I don't know if she has ever done a convention or if she's. I don't know. I don't know what her history is. I think she's done Phantom Palooza, which was the Phantom of the Paradise convention up in Canada. But she writes cookbooks now. She doesn't really do anything. I was lucky enough to see her at a Q&A for the 40th anniversary screening of Phantom of the Paradise, and I was just like, oh man, like I would love to meet her at a convention at like where I would just be able to kind of talk with her a little bit even more about Suspiria or Phantom or stuff like that. She was such a sweetheart during the Q&A. It would just be very cool to meet her at a convention. Lauren Ashley Carter is also another one. She was in Jugface, The Woman. She is a young actress who just started doing not really conventions. She would show up with Modern Cine, which is the production company that put out The Woman and Jugface and Girl Next Door and other films of that nature. And she was at their booth a couple times. So like kind of that like semi guest or like that guest that's brought on by a vendor, which are actually some of the very cool guests because they're just I don't know they're almost testing the waters in a way, but like also they're I don't know it's just, she's really cool, I've heard, and she is a great young actress, and it would be really really neat to meet her as well. And then there's plenty of people who do conventions that I haven't met, you know, like Angus Scrim, who I know like he probably won't be doing conventions too much longer, but like I'd love to meet him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, just that'd be very cool. Nathan Basil, who played Leslie Vernon in Behind the Mask, he only did a handful of conventions, and I know he knows how big his fan base is, but I know he's also very humble, and but damn man, I would love to meet him. Film for me is I can't put it into words, man. That film's incredible, and it would be very cool to meet him. I don't know if he knows what kind of a legend Leslie Vernon will be, and is, but how like legendary Leslie Vernon will be, and even more. Like so, I don't know. There's plenty of people that like I would love to meet, but I think Jessica Harper is probably the big one. To be honest, like Suspiria and Phantom of the Paradise, both those films mean a lot to me, and the fact that she is in both, like the leads in both, crazy.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
What about you?
Yeah.
What is your like number one?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's a lot. I would love to meet Tobe Hooper because I'm such a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I would love to meet him. Gosh, you talked about oh gosh, and I'm already blanking on her name. From Suspiria.
Oh, Jessica Harper.
Jessica Harper. Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Jill Schwellen?
Yes. She was in. Was she in Popcorn?
She was in Popcorn, The Stepfather, Cutting Class. She's in some of my favorite '80s horror movies.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like my favorite unsung scream queen. I'd love to meet her. Always thought she was just the cutest thing.
Yeah.
but I'd love to meet her too. She's definitely on my list. And there's a lot. I mean, I'd love to meet Wes Craven. I'd love to meet, Robert Englund. I mean, there's a lot I'd like to meet. Clive Barker is definitely one too. But
Yeah, totally.
Uh, yeah, I think that's kind of my list at this point,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
But then, I mean, you start thinking about prices, and you know what I mean, and
Sure,
things
sure.
things are just. It's just the prices with everything's gone out of hand. Photo ops is out of hand, and
Yeah,
which that's something that we really didn't talk about is photo ops, and that's something that
sure,
a
yeah.
lot of people I know who were adamant convention goers,
Mhm.
they're going less and less these days because of stuff like the photo ops and double
Yeah.
dipping, stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I know that I want to. I think it's Monster Mania. Is a convention that not banned is not the word, but chose not to utilize photo ops to kind of take a stand. Um, Again, for lack of a better term, it sounds so dramatic, but it kind of is in the convention scene. Like that's a big topic.
Yes.
It's again, like The Walking Dead. It's a tool that needs to be utilized and used correctly. If you are doing a mega show and you're going to do photo ops, you're going to really kind of alienate some people.
Right.
I feel because you're going to be taking away the general time that a guest will be at their table. You're going to be cutting into that time where the majority of guests or the majority of convention goers will be spending their time. So like you're really cutting that down, and you're not causing for, in my opinion, the best. You're not providing the best customer service, if you will.
Exactly.
But it really does depend on the show. Like if you are doing a smaller show and you do have like a small reunion, like maybe the photo ops is a cool thing. Rock and Shock did photo ops for Child's Play. They had Alex Vincent, Brad Dourif, and Fiona Dourif, I believe her
Yeah.
name is. Okay,
Brad
they
Dourif's
did
daughter.
photo
Yeah.
ops. They did a cool photo op with them for Chucky, and that is a small enough show where you can make that work. And if people want to spend a little bit extra, especially because Brad Dourif doesn't do so many shows, like
Right.
it's a viable option, and it can fit into your timetable, into your schedule. But like as a convention coordinator, you really gotta know your convention and know your fans and know who is paying for your service. So yeah, it's a tool. It's got to be used right. I think it's a great tool and very cool for people who want a souvenir like that. But like, you just got to use it correctly.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the only time a photo op like that should be used is if you're getting like a cast reunion photograph with a bunch of people,
Yeah.
or if like you're getting, say for instance, you want to get Robert Englund in Freddy makeup, or you know what I mean, or you want to get Doug Bradley in Pinhead makeup.
Yeah.
Then it's
Yeah.
okay. When it's
Yeah.
just used simply as the tool to double dip,
Yeah.
that's when I find it really kind of repulsive. But and I'll give that convention all the credit in the world if they've taken a stand against photo ops. I definitely will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's Monster Mania. They are one of. I know we're kind of running low on time, but they're one of the first real like kind of East Coast conventions that's been around for a while. Like they're well into their 30th, 40th convention. Like now, they've been doing it since early 2000s, and old school is not the right term because I feel like there's a negative connotation with saying old school. But they have some ideas about how things have run and how things have worked for them, and they make it happen. And if they need to cut out something that's causing distress, they give a shit about their fans and their convention goers and their regulars. Like they want to make the best, and for the new people coming in, they want to provide the best experience.
Right.
And photo ops just wasn't cutting it for them, so they cut it out. No.
And yeah, we are running a little low on time, so I'll ask you one closing question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But
For sure.
where do you see horror conventions in the future? Where do you see horror conventions 10 years from now?
Um, they'll be around. They'll definitely be around. I think that it's hard not to. Maybe they won't be in the same like way that we see them now. Maybe they'll even kind of not regress, but maybe they'll kind of backtrack into $20 for an autograph and a picture. It's hard. It's really hard to say. Other than I know that they'll exist. I know that there are convention coordinators out there that are kicking ass and being progressive and um, who are also really listening to their convention goers. They're really listening to the feedback that they get. Um, as horror fans are, some like most of the convention coordinators do care. They're also passionate. Like they give a shit. So when they give a shit and they want to put on a show for people who care and who are passionate, when passion meets passion, that won't ever die. That won't ever fade away. Um, when those things don't mix, or when there's disinterest, but the disinterest is trying to control something for the passionate, that doesn't work out so hot. So those shows, if they exist, are probably going to die out. Like they're not going to have the sustainability that something like, and I'll straight up name it, like something like a Horror Hound, a Monster Mania, a Rock and Shock, a Spooky, even like down in Florida, they're killing it. Yeah, they're like a party show and they're a huge show, but they know what they're doing. Like, and not to say that there aren't, I don't know, there might be conventions out there that don't know what they're doing. One that also know, like Cinema Wasteland and Chiller, they've been around forever and they're just killing
Right.
it. Those shows aren't going to go away. Like people need those shows in their lives because that's where they get to hang out with their friends again. That's where they get to have the best weekend of the year is at these
Right.
shows. Like that's truly what it is, and people know that. And the convention coordinators, though, all through all the stress that they go through to put on a show, that's also the best weekend of their lives. Like that's also like they put that on. Like they provided that show. Not even for the fan, but for themselves. Like that's their show. So like the conventions will be around, and I'm excited to see what changes for the better will be made for conventions, utilizing social media, doing cool stuff with panels, with videos, with all kinds of stuff. Like when people keep wanting to be progressive and changing it up and being cool about it, like that's what excites me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if we've got any questions. Boba Fett asks, "What are our thoughts on photo ops?" Which we kind of just discussed that.
For sure.
It all depends. It all depends on how they're utilized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've made one sale tonight.
Well,
So
yes, yeah, that's very cool. I mean,
at least,
that's so awesome. Thank you so much, man. That's Steam Shovel, right? Is that yeah? Thank you.
yes,
That's so rad, dude.
Saskatchewan Steam Shovel.
Oh,
Yes.
gotcha. All right, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm about it.
Yeah, so thank you, Saskatchewan Steam Shovel.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you guys go over, check out my review of Phantasm. There's a link to
Yeah.
I think it's phantasm.storeenvy.com,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
And it's Phantasm, F-A-N, Tasm.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I
keep
am
that in
not
mind.
Wisconsin, but thank you.
What have you got coming up? Anything in the works coming up next? Any other film or documentary projects?
The hope is to continue a little bit with something Phantasm related. Tough to say right now. Everything involves money, which sucks.
Oh yeah.
But it's the truth.
Yeah.
But I mean, horror. Phantasm was really my way of getting back into horror and feeling that passion again. So I've been writing some like narrative horror shorts, which I'm really excited about. Again, it's just a matter of getting it made, man. I moved from Connecticut out here to LA about a year ago, and I'm still trying to figure out the lay of the land. And it's a crazy, crazy world out here, but it's exciting nonetheless. And just trying to figure it all out, man. I would like to continue with something with Phantasm, but I've also written some narrative shorts, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wish you the best of luck. I'm sure everybody watching also wishes you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
maybe we'll bump into each other one day at a convention, and I'll let you buy me a beer. How does that sound?
I definitely hope so, man. I hope so.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. If you don't care to hang out with me just for one more minute after we go off the air, but been a big pleasure hanging out with you. Thanks to everybody who hung out with us tonight as we talked conventions. And yeah, don't forget to check out phantasm.storyenvy.com and my review of the film. I think you guys will definitely convention goers and non-convention goers alike will like it. So anyway, until next time, you guys take it easy. We'll see you later.